In Abuja, a city that never sleeps, my entire world was forced into a coma. My name is Amara, and this is my story. It's about how the people you call family can be the same ones who auction off your happiness just to puff up their own pride, creating a deep wound that you never see coming. They dressed me up in borrowed clothes for a wedding I never asked for, to a man they despised, all while they popped champagne to celebrate my stepsister's marriage to a king. They really thought they had buried me in shame, but they had no idea what was truly unfolding behind the scenes. They had just planted a seed. Our house in Garki was always a stage, and my stepmother, Mama Clara, was the star of the show. Her voice was just as loud as her expensive Ankara wrappers, and her presence sucked all the air out of a room. She ruled our home with an iron fist and a sharp tongue, saving every last drop of her warmth for her own daughter, my stepsister, Zainab. And Zainab? She was her mother's mirror image. Vain, ambitious, and cruel in that special way only someone who's never known a single day of hardship can be. She'd float through the house in fine lace and velvet, and her laughter always seemed to echo with mockery whenever her eyes landed on me. I was the quiet one, the background character, always more comfortable in the kitchen with the smell of jollof rice than in the living room with their biting words. My simple cotton wrappers and beaded slippers were a constant source of their jokes. The air in our home was usually thick with unspoken resentments, a silence that could be more suffocating than shouting. But one evening, that tension didn't just snap. It was obliterated by a declaration from my stepmother that would send my entire world into a violent tailspin, shattering everything I thought I knew about my future. Mama Clara was sitting in her favorite chair, fanning herself slowly with a triumphant glint in her eyes. It turned out Mr. Okafor, the famous billionaire whose face was plastered on every business magazine, had asked for Zainab's hand in marriage. His wealth was legendary in Abuja, with properties in Maitama and a fleet of cars that could cause a traffic jam all on their own. This was the moment Mama Clara had been dreaming of her entire life, the ultimate prize for her ambitions. She surveyed the room, letting the silence hang before her sharp voice cut through it. Zainab, my daughter, you have made me so proud. You will marry Mr. Okafor, the billionaire. Our family will finally get the respect it deserves. Zainab offered a smug smile, her own ambition gleaming. Of course, Mama. It's only fitting. A diamond for a diamond. I lowered my eyes, expecting to just fade back into the wallpaper. But then Mama Clara's cold gaze pinned me to the spot. And you, Amara, we can't have an unmarried girl your age bringing shame to this family. Especially not now. You will also get married. You will marry Chinedu. The name just hung there in the air, heavy and suffocating. Chinedu? Our Gateman? I looked at my stepmother's stone-cold face, then at Zainab, who was now openly smirking at me. Mama, please, I whispered, my voice barely audible as I pleaded with her. The Gateman? Her fan slammed on the table, the sharp crack echoing my breaking spirit. You should be grateful I found you a husband at all. Who else would marry you? A quiet mouse with no ambition. Chinedu is a man. That is more than you deserve. The decision is final. They say trouble is like a bicycle. Once you start pedaling, it just keeps on going. My wedding day was proof of that. It was a small, sad affair, held right there in our compound with no music, no food, and no joy. The only sounds were the whispers of the few neighbors Mama Clara had invited to come and watch my public humiliation, their pitying glances feeling like stones. She forced me into a borrowed wrapper. The fabric was old and faded, a stark symbol of the future she had chosen for me. The coral bead she tied around my neck felt less like a wedding accessory and more like a slave's collar. Chinedu stood beside me, his face a mixture of nervousness and pity. I knew he was a good man. He always greeted me with a respectful nod, and he had kind eyes. But he was the Gateman, a living symbol of everything my family looked down on. This wasn't a marriage. It was a punishment designed to break me completely. Just 1 week later, Abuja practically stood still for Zainab's wedding. It was a full-blown carnival of wealth and excess. The ceremony was at one of the most expensive event centers in Asokoro, a palace of sparkling chandeliers and grand staircases. Zainab looked stunning in a gown that was rumored to cost more than a car, with gold dripping from her neck and wrists. Mr. Okafor, her billionaire husband, looked every bit the part. Confident, charming, and powerful. I was forced to go, of course. They hid me in the back like some poor, forgotten relative, a ghost at their glorious feast. I watched as politicians and celebrities sprayed them with money, a literal river of naira flooding the dance floor. Mama Clara was in her element, laughing loud and dancing with all her pride on display. Seeing them, so bright and celebrated, while I was shackled to a life of poverty, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. The contrast wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty. They didn't just want me to be miserable. They wanted a front-row seat to my despair. Have you ever felt like the world was completely against you? Or that your own family was the source of all your pain? So many of us have stories of betrayal and finding the strength to keep going. If this story is hitting home for you, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications, because you have no idea what's coming next. Life with Chinedu started in that small, cramped room behind the main house. It was just 4 walls, a single bed, and a tiny window that looked out onto the back fence. The glamour of my father's house felt like another planet, replaced by the stark reality of a shared bathroom and the daily struggle to make ends meet in our humble space. But in that tiny room, something I never expected started to grow. Chinedu wasn't the man I thought he was. He was quiet, yes, but his silence wasn't from ignorance. It was from watching everything. He was kind in small, meaningful ways. He would come back from mysterious side jobs with my favorite street food, a small bag of roasted plantain or a piece of suya. He even carved a small, beautiful wooden bird for me, its wings stretched out like it was ready to fly. He handed it to me with a gentle voice that felt like a balm on my wounded soul. "For you," he said. "So you remember you can still fly, even when you feel caged." His words stirred something deep inside me, a flicker of hope in the darkness. While my stepsister Zainab was busy posting pictures of her lavish trips to Obodo Oyabo, I was discovering a quiet kind of peace. Of course, she would still call, her voice dripping with fake pity just to torment me. "Ah, Amara, my sister," she'd sigh dramatically over the phone. "I just got back from a shopping spree in Dubai. Mr. Okafor bought me a diamond necklace. I do hope your husband is at least able to feed you." Mama Clara's visits were even worse. She would sweep into our tiny room with a profound sneer, her eyes cataloging every single sign of poverty as if collecting evidence of my failure. "Chai, look at this place," she would exclaim, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Is this how you're living? Like a rat in a hole. Your sister is sleeping in a mansion in Maitama, and you are here, married to a man who smells of sweat and engine oil. You have brought so much shame on us." I learned to let their taunts roll off my back, but something about Chinedu started to confuse me. He wasn't just a simple gateman. Sometimes, late at night, I'd see him talking on a sleek smartphone I'd never seen before, his voice low and urgent. He'd leave often, disappearing into the night, and only coming back in the early morning, sometimes with bruised knuckles and a haunted look in his eyes that told a story I couldn't yet read. One afternoon, while I was sweeping, I found a loose floorboard under our bed. Curiosity won. I pried it open and found a locked metal box. I hesitated for a second, then broke the simple lock. I opened it, and my heart just stopped. Inside were stacks of foreign money, a passport with Chineda's picture, but a completely different name, and at the very bottom, a faded photograph. It was a picture of two young boys standing in front of a massive, opulent mansion that looked like a palace. One of the boys was clearly a younger Chinedu, and the other one, I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth in disbelief. The other boy was unmistakably a young Mr. Okafor. My mind was racing, trying to put the pieces of this impossible puzzle together. Who was my husband? And what on earth was his connection to the billionaire my stepsister married? That night, when Chinedu came home, I wasn't looking at a humble gateman. I was looking at a man who was holding 1,000 secrets. Finding that box didn't just raise questions. It detonated a bomb in the foundation of my new life. The quiet peace I'd started to build was gone, replaced by a raging storm of confusion and fear. I had to confront him. That night, I waited for him to return, my heart hammering against my ribs. I placed the photograph on our small table, the image of the two boys illuminated by our single flickering bulb. My voice was steady, even though I was trembling inside. Who are you, Chinedu? And what is this? He looked at the photo, and the mask of the humble gateman completely disintegrated. A deep sigh escaped his lips, a sound heavy with years of secrets. My real name is Emeka, he began, his voice low and serious. And that man your sister married. He's my brother, Jide. But he isn't Mr. Okafor. I am Mr. Okafor. The words hung in the air, more shocking than any insult my stepmother had ever thrown at me. He explained everything then. The legendary tycoon father, the bizarre will, to inherit his fortune. Emeka had to live as a poor man for 1 year to find a wife who loved him for his character, not his billions. Jide was just a placeholder, a public face. But he got addicted to the power, Emeka confessed, his eyes filled with pain. He and your stepsister. They planned to cut me out for good. I've been working in the shadows, gathering proof to take back what is mine. The truth was finally out, but the real battle was just about to begin. Do you think Zainab and Mama Clara will finally get what they deserve? Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like this video if you're ready for the final showdown. The final act of our little drama took place at the annual Okafor Foundation Gala, the biggest high society event of the year. Zainab and Jide, still posing as Mr. and Mrs. Okafor, were the hosts. Zainab was in her element, draped in diamonds and soaking in the adoration of the Abuja elite. Mama Clara was right there beside her, preening like a proud peacock. And then we arrived, not through the back entrance, but through the grand main doors. I was on Emeka's arm, not in a borrowed wrapper, but in a breathtaking gown he had bought for me. He was no longer Chinedu the gateman. He was Emeka Okafor, looking powerful and in control in a tailored suit that commanded respect from everyone in the room. A wave of confusion washed over the opulent hall, the celebratory music screeching to a halt. Excited whispers turned into loud, shocked gasps as people tried to process the scene. Jide's face turned white as a sheet of paper, his hand frozen mid-air. Beside him, Zainab's practiced smile cracked and then froze, her eyes wide with a terror that was beautiful to behold. Emeka walked onto the stage and took the microphone. With calm, clear authority, he laid out the entire scheme for all to hear. He revealed his true identity, his father's will, and his brother's betrayal, showing all the proof to the company's board members, who were all sitting right there in the stunned audience. The fallout was instant and spectacular. Jide was escorted out by security, his short, fraudulent reign as the fake billionaire crashing down around him in front of everyone. The most satisfying moment, however, was watching Zainab unravel. Her entire world had crumbled in a single instant. The diamonds on her neck suddenly looked like cheap glass. She turned on me, her voice a hysterical shriek that echoed in the silent hall. "You! It was you! You bewitched him! You are a snake!" But her words had no power anymore. I just looked at the woman who had caused me so much pain, and for the first time, all I felt was pity. In the end, my stepmother and stepsister lost everything they had schemed for. They were utterly disgraced, their names becoming a cautionary tale whispered at parties across Abuja, a story of blinding greed and poetic justice. Mama Clara's life's greatest ambition had turned to ash in her mouth, a bitter taste she could never wash away. And me? I had found something so much more valuable than money or status. I found a man who saw my worth when I was dressed in rags. A man who cherished me when the world laughed at me. My forced marriage to the Gateman turned out to be the greatest blessing of my life. They thought they were writing my story as a tragedy, but they didn't realize they had cast me as the queen in a fairy tale I never even knew was mine.